Good morning to you, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. May 17th, 2021, here from Santa Monica, California, United States of America, blessed planet Earth. I hope this finds you well, wherever you may be seated or standing or walking. Nice to have you in my life, even though it be momentarily here across time and space. Thank you, digital frequencies. Today's sharing, again, a very spontaneous opening to that which is most relevant to me. It seems to continually intersect with mortality, with the beauty of being in consciousness, an awareness of being. And today I'd like to speak about form, the body, the mind, life. Form and the intersection of form with consciousness. And I wanted to include bondage, but also freedom. Form in context to consciousness. And to some extent, illuminate the role of these cognitive qualities that create conflict, suffering, bondage, the source of inner affliction, and the understanding of them as a means of freedom, freedom from affliction. And most of it is so self-evident. And so please may I allow you and support me and support our friends in the applied Dhamma of embodying a more meditative presence with ideas as we hear them and as we think about them and as we feel them, to extract from the concepts, the thoughts themselves, the integral experiential actions, the intersection, the felt realities, the mindful engagement of beingness within form, navigating life through choice, decoding the propaganda inherent in the various narratives of our conditioning and our culture and our politics, and to understand the distinction between the form and the using of something, and how we bring an emotional or cognitive aesthetic to how we speak, to how we talk, to how we touch, to how we listen, to how we think, to how we move. Form, the quality of interaction with form, what we learn from our engagement with the quality of what we bring to form. And can we learn the mindful spiritual intelligence to decode how we generate afflictions and bondage from our own unrecognized engagement with consciousness and form, and how we can take greater responsibility and greater joy, if you will, with creating our own sense of wholeness, unity, peace, and I would say cognitive freedom, freedom from bondage, and the freedom of wonderment and the beautification of both mind and shared space, if all goes well in shared space. You can be as beautiful as you want, but often we must encounter, as we know so well, the forces of evil and denigration, incarceration, the diminution of universal human rights, the desecration of democracy as we see around the world, especially in the country of Myanmar today. So, trying to live more and more in this concept of what I would call natural abundance. I know it sounds a bit New Ageian and a bit cliched, but it's so easy to live in inadequacy. That somehow the way we interact with form and the ideas of concepts and people, places, things, amounts, durations, all the ways in which spatial relationships are determined and the quality of those relationships, there's an easy overlay, a mental filter, a narrative, a papancha, a proclivity, a set of overlapping cognitive waves that influence how we perceive phenomena and form, in which we're in deficit, the compromise to a sense of fluidity, fullness, wholeness, or abundance. We place our worth in things that don't really exist. Ultimately, money is just an idea in the mind. Just like you cannot eat food through the idea alone, it must be cooked, prepared, ingested, and from that there's the nutrient that comes obviously from eating. How we live, how we speak, how we relate to form, to me is immeasurably more important than the form itself, although we do have creative choices in trying to acquaint and to stay close in proximity with favorable events. But often people, ourselves included, must encounter complexity and difficulty, and we must do all that we can to transform that complexity into a heightened state of, I would call, freedom, and the abundance from a new form of worth and wealth, the abundance of insight or panya, wisdom, and the radiance of freedom. If we place our worth in body and form, in duration and time, then inevitably we'll be confronted with old age, disease, and death, and we'll suffer great interior consequences as a result of those blind allegiances to things that can't be controlled in form. But obviously, if our abundance and our healing and our wealth and our affluence is in how we live in relationship to time, to events, to things, to life, to aging, we can beautify and overcome the narrative of denigration through time and form. So for those of you who are involved in meditation, and I know in my own life right now, meditation is becoming more and more a predominant presence. And what I mean by that is the heartfelt, mindfully awakened engagement, how I do what I do, is far more interesting, compelling, not than what I'm doing. What I'm doing is also very important, but how I eat and the quality of nutrient from that eating and the learning from eating, the liberation from greed through eating, the elevation of generosity through an awareness of eating, the nutrient through eating, not the obsession of food and eating, but the nutrient, the luminosity of consciousness that allows me to pursue my own creative Dhammic dream. It's not just being mindful of the food and tasting. It allows me the cognitive gift of choosing my destiny, choosing my engagement with people and form, choosing my words. And that quality, that abundance of choice, Dhamma choice, to overcome the afflictions and bondage and the elevation of the good, the true, and the beautiful, to me, that is living the Dhamma life. It doesn't need to be a Buddhist or a Christian or a Jew or an atheist. It's a pure recognition of the trans-religious felt wisdom of how to embody consciousness, the attributes of consciousness, and intersect consciously with form, color on the eye, sound on the ear, the formation of words, the timing of words, the choice of words, the tonality of words, consciously, mindfully choosing how we engage with thought, speech, and action as priority over what we're doing, what we're saying, and how we're thinking alone, although those are immeasurably important as well. Again, coming back to my blessed few years in monasteries in South Asia, primarily in Burma, but also in Thailand and Sri Lanka, briefly in Vietnam, also in Bali, a few other places around the world, but Myanmar and in Lanka. It's so beautiful to be in an environment where the aesthetics of consciousness, a Dhamma-infused aesthetic to overcome fear, greed, and delusion as a priority of your raison d'etre, to be. So elegant to be in a company of men and women, nuns and monks, lay yogis and lay men, boys and girls who have renounced the world temporarily to abide in the sanctity, in the beauty of empowering Dhamma aesthetic to how they choose to inhabit consciousness as priority, quality over quantity, transformational wisdom over outcome, the intimacy of an awakened engagement with process over duration or time, how you do what you do, how well do you occupy your own interiority, can you sit and abide in breath, out breath. I say it over and over again to myself these days, and I thank the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, the Venerable Sayadaw U Sujata, the Venerable Sayadaw U Janaka, the Venerable Sayadaw U Pandita. Neither wish to live nor fear dying. Occupy, engage, elevate, transform, release affliction, the abundance of natural radiant healing. Be in the Dhamma radiance of the most beautiful transformational states of mind possible through your deep, ongoing desire to take refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Therein lies natural abundance, natural healing. I am choosing to consciously occupy the qualities of Buddha, the qualities of awakening. I invite you to invite me, to invite your friends and our social tribes, our allies, our sisters and brothers. What are the qualities of Buddha? What are the qualities of awakening that we're choosing, you're choosing, to illuminate as the raison d'etre of our being? To define our stature, to establish the meaning of dignity within beingness, and to give ourselves the vocation of a Dhamma life. What are those qualities inherent in the word Buddhang Saranang Gacchami? I take refuge in the Buddha, the qualities of awakening as a living, breathing, felt oxygenation of body intersecting with form and the phenomenology of the senses, and the intersection of an awareness with thought and papancha, with narration, relaxing the afflictions, elevating the good, the true, and the beautiful. There's something in the no time off model of love. The highest, most dedicated conviction in the artistry, your chosen artistry, Alan, of how to occupy your own beingness in context as worth, how you sit. So many of these things that I've been hearing for decades in monasteries and books and teachings and memories and conversations are all coming back as if my interior artistry, my own humble Rembrandt, my own love of Mozart, my own love of hip hop, my own love of the satirical, theatrical, satirist, the musician, the dance lover, the lover of love, those aesthetics and the simplicity of those aesthetics and the occupation and the radiance of those aesthetics as the most efficacious to the healing of a heart, of a body, of a mind. Taking duration, taking time out of it, taking the narration out of the future. There's something in me when I write down, what does my heart really want? There's this, I wrote it yesterday, a home. And I'm going like, yes, concentric levels of home. You would love to have a home if it weren't there. It's a very specific desire. Yes, I'd like to have a home. It's so Rumi-esque, it's so natural, it's so beautiful. But it better not be there or over there. It better be here, and it better be affordable, and it better be well cared for. And all of a sudden, home becomes a burden, right? So the word Buddha and Dhamma, taking refuge as a yogi in these very effervescent qualities of being as home. So the word refuge for me is a very deep embodiment of the quality of home. And the abundance of that home being how I occupy my heart, how I occupy my voice, how I occupy the movement of my body and my arm. Last night I was drinking a glass of wine and I was eating, and I was just in, I won't say gratitude, but in, I would call it the natural abundance of an aesthetic of simplicity, just being human in a moment of time, vulnerable, at times afraid, other times just pure. Isn't that what we are as humans, in this deep, radical, existential trust? And I was so appreciative that I could be aware of awareness. I could be aware of my body. I could be aware of the taste. I could lower my arm and lower my glass and just simply eat in silence and occupy the silence of sound and memory, the anticipation of sleep, the feeling of relaxation, letting go of time and memory and fear and hope and my friends and my future and my books and my daughter and my next few months and my diagnoses. Everything was just relaxing into the purity of an aesthetic, of an awareness of being. And I was in a monastery 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 2 years ago. This week, 42 years ago, I left this country, traveled to Asia. I found a monastery where I wanted to ordain. I could not do it at that time. I came back to America. Eventually, I ordained with the very monk whom I met in Burma, the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw in New York. And the very next day, May of 1979. Flew off with him back to Burma, where I was blessed to be given a longer-term visa to occupy exactly what I'm doing nearly 50 years hence, occupying the sacredness of mindful presence in being. And here I am 5 decades later, continuing not just to talk about that trajectory of intimacy within a monastery to practice mindfulness of inner beingness at the intersection of consciousness and form. But a lot of time has gone by from then to now. In breath, out breath. The blink of mortality. I want to reiterate the obvious. We are all so in this together. We are all so in this together. Beyond the apartheid of privilege and the apartheid of preference and power, beyond language and division, religion, wealth, status, looks, age, gender, beyond intelligence, there is the humanness, there is the ecosystem of nature that we're embedded. There are the non-humans, the animals, the trees, the water, the sun, the radiance, the natural abundance to just simply feel ourselves in communion with the ecosystem of DNA and God and the future and multidimensionality and devas and brahmas and buddhas and sex workers and soldiers, the intersection of life with life, this great kaleidoscopic samsaric poetry of horror. Here we sit, in breath, out breath. What is your meditation, Alan? Where are you going today? Overcome your fear, overcome the need for longevity. Immerse deeply in the felt reality of consciousness occupying form, consciously, mindfully arising, in breath, out breath, neither wish to live, nor fear dying, meditating all times, all context, all states, all postures, all dimensions, all times. No time off Dharma, no monastery, no Myanmar, no American, no Chinese, no totalitarianism, no democracy, in breath, out breath. The monastery allowed us to take the monastery wherever we went around the world. Do you have your sacred monastic experience inside of your being? Do you practice meditation? Do you live meditatively? Or do you live in the radiance of freedom from affliction and the freedom to occupy beauty? Are you still hoping to come out of a pandemic and lockdown to go into a retreat? Take the future out of presence, Alan. There may not be a future. In breath, out breath. I want to come home. Buddhang saranang gacchami. These words have never meant more than they mean today. Although significantly weakened by forces beyond my understanding right now, not even able to talk very freely, struggling to talk as if I'm sick, who knows what's going on. I used to have a more clear, radiant voice. Now it's diminishing by the day. Where are you going? Where are you going? You're hydrated. You live. Is it the hospitals? Is it the prognosis? Is it the fear? Is it what? Doesn't matter. In breath, out breath. Occupy the radiance of your being. You have learned how to do that. Natural abundance. Live in the natural healing of your own heart. Overcome fear. Elevate the good, the true, and the beautiful. I'll close. I was thinking of some of my time living in Sri Lanka as a monk. No electricity, no running water, a well with a bucket. Obviously, before the internet, no phones, no bells, no alarms. Just this great cognitive engagement of nature and consciousness and form. It felt so primordial. I remember looking back at myself, watching myself be in real time, and reflecting upon infinity, both backwards and forwards, and seeing the human movement of me and you and Earth in intimate, aligned relationship of bathing and walking and eating and growing, in birds and sunsets and oceans and waves, and the timelessness of this foreverness that we're in. I remembered I was only young at that time. Wow. And I could easily imagine 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, and how they could have been a blink. That blink. What defines your blink when you are in between the blink? What do you bring? The pure act of being incarcerated in this liberation process, embedded against our wills until we understand how we must engage consciousness, the meditative lens, the empowerment of the yogi, understanding the qualities of consciousness in form. How well do we do what we do, right? Something so remarkably healing about equanimity, balance, ease of being, taking the fear out of the future, taking the fear out of aging, taking the fear out of scarcity, taking the fear out of the beauty of what you are and who you are, where you are, doing what you're doing, in breath, out breath. There was a time where abundance was proportionate to how well I walked inside of my own body, thinking back as a monk at times. My abundance was how well I sat in dignity and in gratitude to the donors to mindfully provide food, and the gift of this intersubjective, interactive process of mindfully imbuing the dana of food with mindful liberation from fear and longevity, and the empowerment of gratitude to donors, to the farmers, to the light, to the occupation of purity, of just being, the abundance of just pure, simple being. Something so special about the abundance of being in simplicity. And the knowledge, the first-hand knowledge of knowing that you and I can occupy quietude, balance, poise, dignity, and an evolving fearlessness that no matter what, you refuse to be defeated by life, by events, by narratives that no longer apply, all about the quality of your mind. Something about that for me today. Just simply honoring, respecting, occupying the quality of my own mind, my own heart, my own peace of being. I want to express my gratitude to the people in my life. You know who you are. All of you, close in each in your own way. To my family, to my daughter, to my parents who passed away, to my teachers, to friends, even to those whom we are estranged, even those who may even see me as enemy. I don't hold that towards you. May you elevate, liberate, and may we co-occupy a shared peace. May the innate trust in our own vocation of courage and mindful engagement and wisdom and freedom, our preservation of universal human rights, our love of democracy, our empathy for those who struggle around the world, our own quest to give more, and the sheer courage to continually to feel without turning away. May we all live in shared support with one another, my way of saying thank you, my way of expressing gratitude, as I and we, as I end today, embark upon what I have anointed as perhaps the most important week of my life, with numerous appointments, tests, and visits with surgeons, doctors, and at the hospital, in which I will gather more information to feel more intimately into my own heart and mind about who I am, where I want to go, with whom do I want to be, doing what, in breath, out breath, knowing that now is now. And so I want to thank you. I don't know what my schedule will be this week. I'll do my best to be here in the morning at 9:30 and hoping for the best. So thank you from my heart for being in my life, for your texts, your voice messages, your comments, your expressions of care and love. They are noticed, they are felt, they're honored, and they are deeply respected. So from my heart to yours, thank you for being there, and hope to see you tomorrow at 9:30. So have a great, great day.